The Kollel Elyon here at Yeshiva and Yeshiva University is a unique institution which is devoted to taking the most advanced students of our rabbinical school who have learned here for years with great diligence and focus, and give them the opportunity to further develop their learning skills and their knowledge so that they can be teachers of Klal Yisrael who have the skills and to have the depth and the awareness to be able to transmit Torah at the highest levels. And I'm so excited that we are starting a new podcast called Bein Hasdarim, Divrei Elyon, which will take a close look at the Chaverim, at the fellows of this Kollel, how they spend their time, what they've done to prepare themselves until now to make use of this opportunity so that they can contribute powerfully to Klal Yisrael.
Hi, my name is Josh Kaufman. I'm from Woodmere, New York. I'm currently a fellow of the Wexner Kollel Elyon, and this is my fourth and final year.
Nice to be with you, Josh. Hi, my name is Yoni Rabinovitch from Denver, Colorado originally. Now I live in Washington Heights with my family. I'm also in the Wexner Kollel Elyon in my fourth year. I'll be graduating at the end of this year and moving on to a new stage.
So we thought this would be a good time to just get together. We've been in the Kollel, been in Yeshiva, in college, these 10 years together. And often we're found giving shiurim or talking and learning, but more than anything else, the Yeshiva has had a profound impact on the person we both become. I know about myself, but even just being together with you, like I know that the impact it's had on you. So it's a good time to really just share with people the inner world of the Yeshiva, what it's like here, what it's like to grow here, and really after a decade to become just a totally transformed and better version of ourselves. So when you were thinking about where to go to Yeshiva, right? Everyone goes for a year to Eretz Yisrael, some too. What was like on your mind? What did you want to get out of that experience?
That's a great question. I need to back up a little bit if that's okay. For most people, many people, the most transformative religious experience that they have is their experience in Yeshiva. For me, it was actually more Kollel before then in my high school years. The way that happened was actually that I went to a bunch of camps, which I really didn't like in middle school. And I told my parents, I'm done with this camp thing. It's not working for me. And my parents said, Yoni, you got to get out of the house. And I said, no, I don't. Later, I figured out that they wanted me out of the house for their own reasons. I thought they just wanted me to have a camp experience. But at the time, they said, we're going to bribe you to go to camp. I said, okay. So they bribed me with, I think it was $200 at the time, which seemed like a big amount of money to be in my eighth grade, post eighth grade. And I agreed to go wherever they sent on the condition that within 1 week, I'm allowed to go home if I don't like it. And afterwards, I learned that after we made that deal, they then scrambled to my shul Rav, Rav Daniel Alter, who now works at Moriah. And they asked him, so where do we send him? He doesn't seem to, like any of the normal camps. So Rabbi Alter, who I have a lot of hakar satov to for making this decision, said, if he doesn't like any of the normal places, so maybe you should send him to Morsha Kollel. And so I went to Morsha Kollel, and the first year, I didn't know how to read Hebrew. I knew very, very little. I knew a little bit of Hebrew, but Aramaic was nothing. I had none of that. And the first year I was just mudsliding, and I garnered maybe 16 nicknames, which are on the sweatshirt, like 4 lines of nicknames just for me. They didn't know what to do with me. But I loved it so much I came back, and each year made a bigger and bigger impression on me that by the time I was moving to Yeshiva, so I was already, set to learn, which definitely had a big impact on me.
Was there like a moment, like a turning point, some epiphany?
If I were to give you an epiphany moment, everything obviously happens in stages and it's not that simple, but I'd say the biggest moment for me was when I had a chavrusa with Rabbi Elliot Schreier, actually, in my second year. He was my college chavrusa while I was in high school. And he always wanted to learn, hardcore brisker lumdus. And I was always trying to talk to him hashkafa. And he would give in to me a little bit. He'd give me a little bit of, here and there. And I remember there was one night where he said, Yoni, if you believe that there's a God, and you believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told you to do X, Y, and Z, and you believe, all of the basic tenets of Yiddishkeit, so how are you spending your time not in fulfillment of what you believe? And that was a big moment for me. That year, I didn't have such ambitious goals, but I picked up Shnai Mikra. I remember post-10th grade, I was doing Shnai Mikra. And that was like my commitment. And each year I did a little bit more, but that was really a very key turning point in my life. Now it's your turn. I want to hear what was your high school impact? What got you to where you went, and pre-yeshiva, or you could start with yeshiva?
So by the time high school was coming to a close, and I had already got my foot really into the world of learning, Gemara, Rashi, Tosas, some Rishonim, Nachronim. I had great Rebbeim in DRS. I had a great Menahel, who I'm still close with, Rabbi Yisrael Kamenetsky, and great Rebbeim. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I had Rabbi Ari Leibowitz in 11th grade and Rabbi David Willig in 12th grade. And they didn't just prepare us for the next stages, but they instilled within us a love for learning and an ability to do it, I think at a high level for what you could expect from a high school kid. But at that point, I was already looking for learning to be something a little bit more than what I did for hours in the morning and when I had free time. It wasn't just about trying to break my head and figure out a Gemara, understand the Rishonim. Obviously, I had so much to improve, like in those regards, but I wanted to see like how could learning like really affect the way I think about life, like outside of the Beis Medrash, like when I'm not learning. Like, is there something here that's not just going to teach me how to practice halachos, but how to think Jewishly, like, just to give a name to it. To think like in halacha, to think in Judaism. And I found myself like searching for the right yeshiva, the right svarim to kind of help me with that. So for many reasons that ended up leading me to Yeshiva Har Etzion, where Lichtenstein, Zatzal was still, at the helm. He was nifter at the end of my Shana Bet. And I already felt then that Baba Kama, we were talking about Baba Kama before, how even Baba Kama, things which seem like they just relate to law or to the practical realm of halacha, they started to force you to ask questions, like moral questions, thoughtful questions, questions about how would a Jew think about this situation? How does the halacha respond and seek to remedy like a situation? And what does that tell us about like the personality of halacha, of Judaism? And just that question itself, or the ability to think in that way, in that mode, about halacha is not just like a static, body of law, but something that really animates like human life, was really the beginning for me of fueling this like tremendous passion for, every line of Gemara, everything we can soak up from, Chazal, and to really just put my whole self like into learning. But after 2 years in Yeshiva Har Etzion, which I'm forever grateful for, the next and obvious step was kind of to come here, where we spent, right, like the last, 10 years, 11 years in my case, 10 years in your case, of our life. So that kind of brings us to here, this Beis Medrash, this room, this table. We actually are filming this on the second floor of the Gluck Beis Medrash, but our home is the whole Beis Medrash, but we spend a lot of our waking hours and sometimes the power nap hours on the first floor.
That's right, down there.
So you came here. I remember a year after me, but I had known you from Morsha Kollel, and you started in Rav Shechter's shir?
Correct. I was in Rav Shechter's shir for my 3 years of college. I learned with very chashuv Rav Mordechai Javaheri. At the time was not a Rav. But I was very, very fortunate because Mordechai was the shir assistant. And so he sat diagonally across from Rav Shechter. Rav Shechter was here, so Mordechai was there across the table. So I got to sit right next to Rav Shechter for 3 years, which was an incredible zchus. And Mordechai and I learned wonderfully. And then whenever someone would come over to Rav Shechter and ask a question, so sometimes when the question was just a little too interesting, so we'd pause and we just give a listen. But that enabled me to get personally close with Rav Shechter, and that he knew who I was, a little bit about me. And so he had a very big impact on me. I always knew since Hakotel, I went to Hakotel my Shana Aleph and then KBY my Shana Bet. I knew since Hakotel, at the end of my first year in Hakotel, that I wanted to end up in Rav Shechter's shir. I heard him online. I said, this is the type of Torah which I connect to the most. And so I said, I want to end up there. In KBY, I went to Rav Silver's shir because Rav Silver I knew was a Talmud of Rav Shechter. That was wonderful, and it was a great, streamlined me to Rav Shechter Shir, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, in addition to being, the Gadol Ador, so what? Not that there needs to be another reason than that, but like, what drew you to him, his shir, his style specifically?
So it's a good question. I think for me, what I saw in what Rav Shechter does is that Rav Shechter will take what seems like an innocuous line in the Gemara, and he'll show you how that line blossoms into, Machlokas Rishonim all the way through Shulchan Aruch and Piskei Halach, and based on this one line in Bava Kama, so it can teach you something about Hilchos Chal. And what I saw was that a way in which to learn, which I very much appreciated, was the more of a bigger picture I have, so the easier it is for me to take information and apply it to everywhere else. And the more that you know, the more every little bit which you learn impacts your learning. And I'm sure you can relate to this, but as we've now been here for 10 years, every single year that I find myself learning, I find that the learning I'm doing, besides for just the data I'm learning itself, but it just means so much more because I see such a bigger picture, a bigger context. And Rav Shechter does that like no one else can, where he has all of Shas and Poskim in front of him. And, I just hear him give a shir on this, and this connects to that. And you see the beauty of Torah. I'll just give one example also. So after college, I was in Ritz, I was in the Kollel in the afternoons, and Rav Shechter gives chaburas to the smicha in the Kollel every 2-3 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. Whenever he'd give a shir, 45 minutes after, just 45 minutes, I was so excited by what he was saying. I would he gives this mashal, but I really felt it. I felt like, the malachim were coming down to listen to what he had to say. And so his Torah is just so sweet because it's so emistic and it's rich and it's broad. And Ashreinu Matal Chalkeinu, that we have a person of that stature. How did you choose to learn from Rav Rosenzweig?
So it's actually hard in this yeshiva to have a number of outstanding Talmidei Chachamim. Somehow feels like selling them short even. Just Gedolei Olam that anybody should want to just soak up from. I find myself often feeling that way, and over time I've gotten more close with Rabbi Neuberger and some of the other Rosh Yeshiva. I actually spent a few months doubling up and going to Rosh Shechter Shir when we learned the Seches Gittin, just because I felt like here's this once in a lifetime opportunity to hear the Kollel Elyon give his Shir Yomi. Like, it's one thing to hear him give a shir at a shul on a Shabbos, but to be part of like what he does day in and day out, like building up Talmidim and teaching them his Torah, I felt like at least I won't regret, I think, if I try my hardest to go to the shir Yomi. But as you said, I am very much like a Talmud of Mori V'Rabi or Rosenzweig, like through and through. I don't know how many people know this, but I don't know if my parents even know this, to be honest.
We can change that right now.
But when there was some rumors circulating 11 years ago that Rav Rosenzweig may leave YU to go be Sa'aram or something in Karen B'Yavneh, so I had already had exposure to him, and I knew I had wanted to hear from him. I don't know if Rav Rosenzweig knows this. And I had to do a lot of thinking, because on the one hand, I really wanted to get a university level education. I have a BA in English literature. I studied some mathematics. And in addition to those two things, like, I just felt like I needed, to have some type of like real serious academic experience. But I said, what would I do? Like, if a Rosenzweig's in YU, it's a no-brainer. But if it's YU, even with all the amazing Rosh Yeshiva, or no college and Rav Rosenzweig and Karen B'Yavneh, like, I might have to go with Rav Rosenzweig and Karen B'Yavneh. And looking back all those years, that totally would have been the right decision. Like, the single most influential person in my life, other than my parents, has for sure been, again, Mori V'Rabi, Rav Rosenzweig. So I chose to go to his shir, despite the lack of like amazing options here. And there is obviously no way, as you said yourself, to sum up like someone's influence or experience. I would say the conversation that we have, or if anybody would hear shir from me, like all of it is an echo of the influence that he's had on me. There's something both our Rebbeim like to quote, of like Rabbi Elazar, who we know says a lot of chidushim that nobody else says in Shas. And then on a Gemara where he has a chiddush, it says, Lo amarti davar me'olam shelo shamati mipi rabosai. It's like, how do you resolve the contradiction between actually having said a novel idea, but then confessing that anything you said comes from your Rebbe? I've heard of Shechter quote this many times. And he says that, Talmud Torah is such that, so a Rebbe has such a profound influence on your personality that blended with your personality so you can produce. That's probably what even enables you to like produce novel ideas. But it's all coming from the influence that your Rebbe has on you. And I tell Talmidim of mine all the time that I'll present an idea and preface it by saying, I may have heard this from Rebbe Rosen, so I don't remember. It could be I did. And if I didn't, anyway, it's a function of the teaching and the influence that he's had on me. So it's hard to like sum that up. It's obviously very hard to sum that up.
It penetrates so deep, though. It penetrates not just to, just the way you learn and the ideas you have, but it penetrates to, when I have a hashkafic issue, even. So if I know Rav Shechter thinks something about something, so I often think that way. Sometimes consciously I know that Rav Shechter once said it, and sometimes afterwards I'll find it in my notes. Oh, he said that, that's why I think that way, but I don't even know that way. People make fun of me sometimes that I have some of his mannerisms, because when you listen for an hour and 45 minutes every day, you cover your mouth a little bit, there's a whole slew of them. But the dictionary, what words you use to describe things, but you subconsciously, when you really, really not just look up to someone, it's the wrong word, it's so much more than that, but you try as much as you can to inculcate them into your personality and, your own way, take what you can from them.
I'm actually very happy that you said that, because I sometimes feel like we both have interactions with Talmidim around here, and we'll probably have a chance to speak about this, but the young men in this Beis Medrash are just so exceptional and so committed to learning, and the future is very bright. I feel that way. But one of the things I often just wonder about, and it'll be so interesting to hear, like, from we both have different rebbeim, but the influence in terms of like its quality is so immeasurable, is like whether sometimes people miss the point of like what and how important that influence of a Rebbe it really is, and like what it really means. Because at the end of the day, however Kadosh Baruch Hu made us, whatever types of people we are, like we're not fully formed and molded. And in order to really be shaped into someone who is a gadol or has legs, right, in their own right, Hamidu Talmidim Harve, you really do need to have someone who themselves, as a product of the Masorah, just how magnificent and
life-changing
that Masorah is, and for them to be that and to be doing that at a high level, and then yourself to be molded in turn by such a person, people sometimes like miss that point about having a Rebbe, like, and what even Masorah I think sometimes means. It's not just like a line of authority and a chain of command. It's like something which has been passed on through generations and has been tested by the greatest minds. It's been tested by time. It's been tested by everything. And it's still here. And it's the greatest. And these gedolim that we have, like what a schus. Not to lose your personality, but to have your personality literally shaped by someone who is a quintessential gadol. And I really sometimes feel, again, the mannerisms is like a little bit extra. We both admit it's more like a quirk.
Yeah.
It just comes with the territory. But to be so shaped and like transformed, we couldn't be the same people. Like we couldn't do any of the things that we do, whatever it is that we do, like without having them just like really every nook and cranny of our personality, it touched in some way or another. And like, we both do things our own way. Like we don't, I hope we don't just like spit back, every single thing that our rebbeim say, but it's the most profound influence. It's like the one you're just, casually having a conversation about. And, you just can't think of any area where it doesn't affect. So I'm like really glad that you at that point, because I sometimes think about the Talmidim, like we missed the boat on that. Like they don't realize how important it is, really to have a Rebbe. They just sometimes think like, oh, I need to have someone to ask questions to, and I need to have someone to give me hashkafas. And it's like a list of things. But they don't even understand. I sometimes really just feel like people, it's not just the people that tell me them. It's like a hard thing to really appreciate of like what a Rebbe does to actually change your life, change who you are.
Right.
It's like, that's really asay l'charav. Like that's what it means. It's an asiyah because you're being made. Like you're really being shaped. It's like, It's amazing. I'm so happy you mentioned that.
It's also asay l'charav. So I think one of the issues nowadays, at least I see it with some of I'm a Night Seder Rebbe here. That's one of the things I do.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Just in case you didn't know that, but for those who don't know, so I'm a Night Seder Rebbe here. So I see hundreds, and I've seen. I've been a Night Seder Rebbe for a few years now. So I've seen, at least 1,000 Talmidim. And one thing which I hear a lot, which I just, I don't know what the right way of explaining that this is not the right perspective, but I hear a lot like it's so hard to make a Rebbe. People in Israel, the Israeli yeshivas are amazing, but one of the things which many of them do is they make it so easy to have a Rebbe. The Rebbe will come over to you, and they'll shmooze with you. And you come to YU, and Rav Shechter's not going to come over to you if you don't come over to him. I know Rosenzweig meets with the guy. It's not exactly the same for every Rebbe, but asay l'charav means you have to make a Rebbe for yourself. But the avoda, just if you want a relationship with a Rebbe, and it's so impactful to have one, so to put in the work to make that happen, and it doesn't always come easy.
I really think that like the pursuing thing, like does the Rebbe come to you or do you come to the Rebbe? Also, sometimes people think about it as how lazy am I versus how energetic or, will I be to pursue the Rebbe? And like how much should they be doing it and how much should they not? I think one of the parts about, pursuing a Rebbe or like, to be mevakesh, the reason why it's so important is not just because they're not going to come to you. So now you have to go to them. Developing a desire to chase after your Rebbe makes it more likely that they'll have an impact on you. And it's for one reason. If you're not chasing after it, you don't really understand how important it is. If you knew how different a person it would make you, like you wouldn't sleep until... That's why it's so important. Like people have to know. It's not always the Rebbe, can't make himself a little bit more available. It's usually true. These are busy people and we want to be very protective of their time, to have time to sit and to think. I'm always reminded, people think, and people should, again, I'm not telling people not to chase after Gedol, and they should, but I'm always reminded of like this article Rebbe Lichtenstein wrote in one of the Leaves of Faith, were printed in one of the Leaves of Faith, where he talks about how, like, because it's more like about psak and having poskim who are like mid-level poskim and having a whole network, a hotline he mentions, and he just says, like, think about how many thoughts like Reb Moshe Feinstein was having, like when the phone rang, and he's interrupted by Shaila Babasa B'chal. So if we have the mid-tier, mid-level poskim, then there will be so many more chidushim and so many more thoughts. And I'm often reminded that these are important. They're even if they're not busy, like doing physical, labor or other jobs or family stuff, their time needs to be important to us. But it's not only about time. If it's going to be miskayim, if it's going to last, it has to be something that you really like have a bikush for. And it's true in all things. It's the most true in this. The way it looks in a Rosenzweig shir, I can't speak about Rav Shechter's shir. The way it looks after a shir is over is that there's a line of 5 Talmidim flanked to the right and a line of 3 Talmidim flanked to the left. It's usually more Talmidim on the right side than the left side. Maybe it's just the years that I was in, I always sat on the right side, and my chavrusa sits on the right side. And it's like hard, and you have to cheshbon, like, am I going to miss class? Which nobody should do, of course, if their teacher finds that unacceptable. And Rav Rosenzweig always tells us that. But like afal pikein, it's like, this is it. Like you want to run after it. You want to wait. You may have to wait your turn. You may be a little bit more shy and it might be hard. But like how badly is it something, or how much are you willing to settle? And I think that is an important perspective for people to have too. Yeah, even if they would have access and it would be so easy. Like that wouldn't be adequate for developing the real meter that a person needs to develop a Rav, which is bikush. That's really what it is. That's why the Gemara says like a yibaya is like I need something. It's not a question. It's like I need it. I need this. Like you can't rest until you have it solved. So you're so right. Like I say l'charav, run after the Rebbe, because one, they may not be able to run after you. But number two, desire and bikush is a prerequisite for being successful. Right. We both feel very strongly about the way that we learn. The Masorah, which is mostly, again, all the same. With the Bein that we've had, the type of style, we both feel very strongly about that. And what is very common, usually after Ma'ariv, after Night Seder, is a lot of those differences, in terms of like how to read a Gemara. So one person from one Rebbe will read a Gemara one way, and other person maybe another different way. It's often not even so different, but a different way. And what I've appreciated going through the years, not to get too personal, but with you and with some other, people who I consider like close chaverim, is that through being here longer and, I guess maturing, intellectually and interpersonally, and in all those ways, I think that the appreciation for what the other side brings to the table is just so much more profound and real and deep than it was just even a number of years ago. Being in the Kollel Elyon, hearing each other give chaburas. Sometimes people think that getting along with somebody or appreciating somebody is like respecting their differences, but not appreciating it and not understanding like the role that it plays. As long as I could tolerate, we can be in the same room together, avoid a fight, but that's not really the highest level of shalom. Like shalom is where you can really see the other person and what they bring to the table, and to see the important place that it plays. And I feel that I've seen myself, how I've just come to appreciate so much, how Talmidim of different Rebbeim, how what they have is so special, and how they can contribute in ways that I cannot, to a sugya, to our community. And I felt, in return, that I've found myself being more understood and more appreciated, by people of other, Rebbe. And again, we're, not to overstate the differences. They never were so different. But whatever the little nofechs are here and there, I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I don't know if that's something so many people who have a strong attachment to their Rebbeim can really say. And that is...
And I think that's thanks to the Kollel Elyon. Yeah, like you mentioned,
right.
If it weren't for the chaburas in Kollel Elyon, I just didn't have exposure, So I remember in college I asked one person from Rav Rosenzweig Shir a question, and I literally just didn't understand what they said back to me. So that was that. I said okay, so I'm not asking.
I'll stay in my
Dalit Amos, and they're thinking about this very differently than I'm thinking about this. So I have to ask the people, and then through the Kollel Elyon chaburas, where each person gives, you don't just have a 15-second soundbite from someone where they might be using slightly different, terms than you're used to, but you hear the way where someone thinks and the way that they present. So you understand, we're actually saying very similar things, but we just, we look at things a little bit differently, but you can appreciate what, exactly like you said, what they're doing, what they're bringing to the table. If I didn't have those Kollel Elyon chaburas, where I got to hear from so many different people from so many different places of learning, so I wouldn't appreciate it.
Don't you think that's also partly a function of the fact that we've been here since we were 20, and now Kanai Nahara, a decade later, I don't even want to say. But don't you think a part of that is you've been in a place 10 years and, you got married, you had children, you became just more thoughtful, deep, contemplative, and you've been able yourself to create more space for others, to listen to other people's viewpoints. One of the benefits of being in yeshiva for so long is that while you're there and through being there, your heart expands. Like what you can appreciate expands. So if you would have left after 4 years or after being in Smicha even, you may not have been at a place where you can really accommodate deeply like other people's contributions. So you could have had the chaburas. Right. Chaburas could have happened your first 4 years. And right. I think the person you became in being here and in deciding to stay here and in working on yourself, I think it also just, gives you that ability. And like how, like, I don't know what I would do without it, like to be able to really see like where other people's, own personal contributions go beyond like whatever you think you can probably do yourself. Not just the yeshiva needs that, like not even just the Jewish community, the world needs that. Like we need to be able to do that.
Right.
And this is like a testing ground, I guess, for seeing where like Shalom, and again, we're all coming from the same
fighting
place.
And make it sound like we're tackling each other.
No, but integration, harmony, like real synthesis.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like a huge piece. I always say to, talk to my wife about how, being able to like get married, like go through the struggles or challenges of dating, and then get married and the process of childbearing. The Gemara calls it, tsar giluvanim. Not because it's like hard, it's a big schus to be able to have children. But anyone who has children knows that they're growing pains. Like it challenges you, it pushes you. So just like that emotional maturity, I found like ends up contributing to so many different spheres, like within the yeshiva. And like the benefit we've had of being here through that is, again, like second to none.
Right. For me, I think it was two different things which helped me open up a little bit to other drachim. I think when you just start in yeshiva, at least that's my personal experience, when you just start, let's say in Rav Shechter's shir, so you're so taken by what he's doing that in order to really let him mold you,
you have to like.
So you have to lock in. That was my feeling. Like everyone else's derech like was just too complicated. I don't know. Right now I'm learning Rav Shechter, so to speak. And then as I went from stage to stage, I went to Rav Leibowitz's shir and Rav Wiederblank's shir, and I've learned from Rav Willig and others. So you see, like there's so much more to see. I'd say that was one thing which was very impactful. I think another thing which people don't appreciate, which also from the Kollel Elyon I've come to appreciate, is that our Rosh Yeshiva are also different in terms of their styles of learning, but you sit them down together and you ask them a question in hashkafa, in life, and it's crazy how they are lined up like as lined up as you could be. We've had these Kollel Elyon Hanukkah Masibas or something where you have Rosenzweig and Rav Willig and people who never in a million years would have even, they're not even interested in learning giving a shir on the same topic. But the moment you ask them a question hashkafa, they are
like instantly
exactly on the same point. And Rav Willig and Rav Rosenzweig, they'll just say, I agree 100%. And they add a little bit here, they add a little bit there. But it helps you recognize, like, it's not like these are different drachim. They're the way they see the world is based on how they learn Torah, and the way they learn Torah is just different emphases.
100%.
And that was very eye-opening for me as well.
It's huge. Well, I also do want us to think about a little bit the Talmidim. Like, I want us to think about, you always say that, you've said this to me a few times now, you're just like a product of the system. So great. So if we're products of the system, like we have some unique insight because we have more experience. It's like, what could we share with them? Like we don't have to talk to them. We can talk to each other, but like, I think about, I have a lot more interaction now with the Talmidim as the years go on. When we have chaburas or little, shmoozes, you have like one-on-one conversations a lot. Like I want them to succeed so badly. Like I want them to do well. I want them to leave here and just also be like ready to take on anything. Like it took me a long time. I think I've said this to you. Like it took me a long time to get to a place where I was here to say, I don't want to leave, but if I needed to, I could. Like that's kind of where I am now. Like it's been 11 years. I'm not ready to go at all. I'm not ready to leave my Rebbe. Like obviously I don't leave him, but it's a different type of relationship. We don't get to see them. We don't get to talk to them on a regular basis. Not ready to leave, but I can. Like I won't break down. Like I could feel like I could stand up on my own. Can't paskin shilas. Hope nobody asks me. But like I can do my thing. Like I can, like how can we make sure that we can say things to Talmidim to give them that same.
The hard part for me is that I didn't feel that way until through Kollel Elyon. So you don't want to say.
But that's the thing, because we got this experience. So like, what do you say, even if you can't have it? There has to be some other answer than you have to stay here for 10 years.
I'm not advocating for that.
Wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah. but I don't want that to be the.
We need some of the funding though.
Yeah, I know the funding.
And maybe more people would stay. I want to be able to think about that. We don't have to speak about that now, but
for me, what I want to touch on is what your goal is if you do smicha, which I just felt I knew I didn't have.
okay.
Looking back, I wish I'd done things a little bit differently, but
The classic path, it's not the only one, but the classic path after, the undergraduate Torah studies and the undergraduate college degree is a 3 or 4 year full-time smicha. So anybody who wants basically to learn after they finish college, it's not the only option, I'll say that again, but it's the conventional, the classic route. So everybody goes into it to learn another 3 or 4 years. And there are different requirements. Everyone spends time in the Kollel, right? The Katz Kollel or Schechter's Kollel from 3 to 6:30. And then in the morning, mostly, right, you're supposed to be in a halacha shir. There's a halacha requirement. So yeah, I'm curious to hear, like, what were some of your goals then? What would your goals be now if you could do it again? Or what would you tell someone starting out?
yeah.
At least how to think about the next 3 or 4 years that they're going into.
So when I started smicha, I knew I just wanted to learn. Learning was what was important to me. And I also knew I loved halacha. I've always loved halacha. That's part of, I didn't really emphasize this before, but how you see the halacha from the Gemara as something Rav Schechter emphasizes, which I always very much appreciated. So I just wanted to learn. I wanted to know halacha. So that's kind of what I came into smicha wanting to do. What I wish I'd done differently is I had this misconception, I don't know, maybe it was naivete, whatever the word is, that if I learn something well, so then I'll know it really well, and then I'll have it. And one of the most, I don't know what the right word is, disheartening, disappointing things is when you learn something once and then 3 years later, you open that thing again and like you recall that you learned this and you remember you once had this down clear. After Hilchos Nida, I could have, answered 95% of the Nida shilas which a rabbi gets, but 3 years later, and you don't know the answers to things. So one thing which I wish
What is that feeling like? Like what? Like explain it to me how it feels for you. Like you open up.
You've never had this feeling. So.
No. Just walk me through it. You open up. No, I never thought that I had Nida down in the first place.
No.
So
we learned Bava Kama in college. You learned that also. So then Tosfos, you're learning Gemara 3 years later, and it doesn't need to be 3 years later. It could be a year later. But Tosfos quotes the Gemara in Bava Kama, and that's a daf you once did really, really well. And you remember there's some machlokes, but you have to open it up because you have to learn it all over from scratch. Because yes, once I had it clear, and yes, it comes back a little, more quickly than it would if you never learned it before. But just it's a feeling of yeush. Like I worked so hard to master this Gemara. I once had this all clear, and now it's gone. At least that's my feeling. That was my feeling. So obviously it's inevitable. It's not gone. I mean, you did learn it, but I'm saying. Hopefully, you.
Don't you feel like at least reading it, learning it again, you're like halfway, closer to the finish line than when you first opened it?
If I'm learning it, Bein, the answer is yes. If I'm learning it properly a second time, so it's so much easier to learn a second time than the first time.
So much easier.
But in reference, sometimes just when something's referenced and there's like some involved question which Tosfos asks, which you have to know the Gemara well to do. So it feels like I have to start from scratch to get back to that point. So if I'm learning, if I learn Bava Kama again next year, so I'm sure it'll come much quicker and everything will click much more quickly. But
just unfortunate that
I know access,
like expertise,
exactly the same
recall.
Expertise, the same access, the same recall. So one thing which was a process, but which for me has been, really a game changer in terms of my own learning, is that I will sacrifice on how much I learn in order to make sure that I have a way of accessing it in the future. So the way in which you're supposed to do that is chazara, but chazara takes, in and of itself that you should just review so that you have it so clear. Not everyone has that kind of time, but I'm very makbid now. Whenever I learn something, when I'm going to learn something seriously, So I type up at least the yisodos, the most fundamental points, the things that I want to make sure that, okay, I learned menachos a few years ago. I'm not expecting myself to remember every single machlokas rishonim, but now if I pull up my menachos document, so it can take me, a minute instead of 30 minutes to go and, just quickly remember that which I learned. For that, that's just been transformational, because I often remember as I'm learning, this connects to something else. I'll even remember the Masechet and the Daf, but I don't have the details clear enough. I don't have the time to connect it all. So just, going back to what Rav Shechter does, it's not shaykh that anyone should think that they could be Rav Shechter, but to get, a feel of what he's doing is to have access to those things, to know where they are, and then to be able to pull them up so that you can connect things. So for me, that was something which, I worked hard on changing throughout Smicha, to go and anything I'm going to learn, if I'm learning it well, I should have typed it up in my own notes and, be conate in my own way. That's something which I get.
Yeah, it sounds like also what you're saying is very much about how you think about the material after you've learned it, and how to organize it kind of after you learn it to make it something that's digestible, that you can really walk away with.
Yeah.
And, often I agree, like I find myself, often the cases when you learn something, as you're doing it, it's just a raw experience. You're learning, and learning as it should, takes you in a bunch of different directions. And there are twists and turns along the way. Unless you have a photographic memory, and even if you do, to be honest, it's very hard to retain information that is like fragmented. A little bit here, a little bit there. There was this kasha, these three kashas, there was a rashash, and you just end up remembering all that stuff, but not like the tachlis, not like the takeaway.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you do, which it sounds like it would be really helpful for people, is after we're done learning something, to just like let it sit for a second, step back, and just write. Like, this was a question that we were dealing with. These were a few approaches, and then maybe a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, but then to just try to, distill
right
from what we're doing, like main takeaways.
Right. So I'll tell you, I do something which is not conventional. I will refuse to have a morning Seder Chavrusa for my whole morning Seder. I have a rule, no morning Seder Chavrusa I ever have can be more than 2 hours anymore, because I need an hour just to, what did we do?
All of that.
Not just morning, but also the afternoon. I have to go and, what did I learn? What did I just organize it all? And then when I finish a topic, let's say I recently finished Hilchos Tzedakah with the Chavrusa of mine, with Rabbi Zaki Dayan. So I told him, I need a week. We did so much. I have it in note form, but like you said, it's fragmented. It's, Shulchan Aruch and Shachs and Tazes and essays. I just need to organize everything. And until you really organize something, for myself at least, until you've organized something, you don't really have it. And now
that's even separate from the computer. Then you'll also have it on your computer. Correct, and you could refer back to it.
Computers are amazing. I'm a big fan of computers.
But it's just even just the organization
even on
itself.
Paper, just to know what did I do? What did I come out from this limud? And that alone is so important. And then, exactly like you said, on top of that, to have a record of it for the future. When I heard Rav Willig says, I have these in my papers all the time. Sometimes you'll ask him a shaila. Rav Willig's a go nadir who will quote my makomos we saw 30 years ago. But sometimes he'll tell you, I don't remember how we got to the conclusion, but the psak is this. And if you want, I can check my papers. What he does is he's done that. He's distilled his learning so that he knows what is the psak halacha at the end of the day, at least with respect to halacha. And then if he needs to go and get the longer answer, so he has it stored away. And the Gedolei Yisrael do this is something which I found is not unique to Rav Willig. Rav Yisrael Reisman, I heard him in his shir. So he said that Dorshei Reshumos say that, what's the pasuk? Something pen tishkach. Who wants to help me out?
Hisham Lecha.
So Rav Yisrael Reisman from Torah V'das, so he likes to say that Dorshei Reshumos say that Hisham Lecha pen tishkach. So he says, Dorshei Reshumos say, what does it mean? It means you're not supposed to forget. So how do you not forget? So he says, Hisham Lecha pen. If you really want to remember what you're learning, so you need a pen. You need to write things down. You need to organize things. You have to keep a record of it, because if you're human, so 10 years later, you're not going to be able to have full access to whatever you learned.
So you would say, like, to the smicha students, it sounds like to be more.
Look, it's a real cheshbon because Baruch Hashem, I'm fortunate to have as much time as I have in the Kollel Elyon, and to whatever extent you're writing down things, so you're not learning something new during that time. But I do feel that one of the greatest Yetzer Haras we have is to just keep on learning new things. And when we learn so much new things without properly organizing and doing chazara and finding ways to make it permanent, so you're actually wasting more time than you think that you're gaining. And so I would strongly recommend to smicha students, or even not smicha students, if you're learning Daf Yomi, Bava Kama, you learned an amazing thing, you heard Rabbi Rosner, whoever it is you listen to, with an amazing idea which you want to keep, you heard a great Dvar Torah, write it down. Parsha Shmos. I have documents for every single parsha.
Right.
Just things related to this parsha, which I love. And it just keeps getting longer, but if I ever need to pull out a Dvar Torah for Va'ira, I pull up the document. These are my favorite Torahs, and for me, holding on to them is very important. I'd love to hear what your takeaways from Smicha, what your goals were going in. Do you have any regrets? Regrets is a strong word. Anything you would have done
That's
a little
a
bit
good
differently?
question. Yeah. I think, like yourself, I wanted to stay learning, because as a continuation of kind of what I was doing, for the 2 years in Har Etzion, and then, the 3 years of college. I didn't necessarily have it in a, my intention wasn't to be able to paskin shilas or be a shul rabbi after my time in smicha. I wanted 4 years to, again, just immerse myself in learning, to try to become a Talmid Chacham. And to me, what was the most important was that I didn't have enough. I wasn't done. Could you ever be done? I wasn't done learning by my Rebbe. There was so much I only learned, after I finished undergrad, from the years I spent in Shir and as a Shir assistant in Smicha, and just continuing to develop myself, sharper skills, reasoning, just learning more dapim, et cetera, et cetera. And that was, to me, the most important thing I could do during smicha. How do you navigate, not avoid, but how do you navigate, requirements that you have? And learning, we always think learning is mashali v'chafet. It's you should learn what you want to learn. But there's a program, and you need to learn halacha. And my feeling, and I know I share this with many other people, is that you have to figure out how to navigate, requirements and to do them with integrity. And for me, I really felt that if I am going to become the posek, quote unquote, or a person who can paskin shilas the way that the smicha program would want, then the only way was just by learning Gemara Rishona, by staying by my Rebbe, by learning how to look at a sugya. Because at the end of the day, and everybody knows this, halacha may not be a goal of learning, not the only goal, but even if it's the primary goal of learning, it's not just the goal, it's also the end of learning. The end meaning, when a person learns a sugya well, then they're able to come out with a firm resolution, to be able to separate, to do borer to all the other shitos, to be able to really understand, what is the bottom line. It's not always easy. How do we discern if early poskim or late poskim have different opinions? If what we really want is to be able to paskin, my Rebbe often says, the best way to be a good posik is to first be a great lamda. It doesn't mean to do pilpul. If you're doing lamdas that can't distill, the practical shitos, the concepts, the ideas, so then that's not going to necessarily prepare you, to become, the more kashas you could ask on a taisus, it helps, really helps. But at the end of the day, it's really being able to analyze the sugya, to understand what underlies the positions, and then to eventually, when you got to a point after a long time, to really have be attuned to the system. The Rambam writes, Roi lahoros b'chol Torah kula. You have to be able to paskin anything in Torah in order to paskin even one. Now, what that means is not for now. Although I know you would love to hear, of Pshat and the Rambam. But what that means, not for now, aside, we can all appreciate that in addition to being a system which is very interconnected, in order to really come one, to understand how the system works, you have to know all of it. But it's through developing those skills, that ability to really see the halacha from the inside, that gives you the ability to it's so hard. How does anybody decide between two things? It's impossible. And maybe we should never decide between two things, unless we really are like the Gedolei Hadar. How do you even know how to go about thinking about those two things? So the answer is by being really understanding the halachic process, which is Chumash, Gemara, and then Shulchan Aruch and the Poskim. And I really felt Manavshach. Number one, I wanted to learn by my Rebbe and learn more Gemara, become a bigger Talmid Chacham. But number two, if I really am to do what the stated goals for the program are, so yeah, it's true. If I don't invest all my time learning Basar B'Chala or Hilchos Tarovis, so yeah, I'm not going to know what it says. It's not going to magically happen. Okay, so you do it because that's the program. But I think in addition to doing all that, a person really needs to ask themselves what their goals are and how they think the best ways to get there. If it's just to be able, to learn the Shulchan Aruch and to say what it says, then that's what a person should apply themselves to. My feeling, from what I had been understood from my Rebbeim, was to really continue immersing, to become a Talmid Chacham Alamdan, that eventually, the halacha comes natural, not knowing what Shulchan Aruch says, but the ability to exercise the skill set of a posek comes naturally from learning, Gemara well, in a well-trained way with a good eye.
Yeah. One of the things we did last year, which maybe I've done a couple times before, but last year in the afternoons, the Kollel Elyon was learning Ezu Neshech, and so my chavrus and I were learning, different chavrus were learning Hilchos Ribbis in the morning. And the difference between when the Gemara is cold with the Rishonim from your afternoon, you're learning the Gemaras all day long in Hilchos Ribbis and Ezu Neshech, parak all about Ribbis, and then you open up, the Shulchan Aruch, it just,
it's not the same thing.
So much smoother. It's just,
but it's not even the same thing, the quality of it.
What?
Going to the Shulchan Aruch then. It's not just it's easier. It's more than easy. It's you really are connected to where you know what I'm saying? You embody it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
But it's a little artificial.
Amazing.
Again, there's only so many hours in the day. So to just jump into the Shulchan Aruch and see the Beis Yosef and jump to Shulchan Aruch, you're missing those a lot of the background, the fundamentals. Not that the psak will be wrong, but it just it's not the same.
And people find their way in the smicha program. People have their different goals. People are very matzliach, I think.
I actually I didn't know that some people don't actually do the requirements.
Right. Until people don't.
When you didn't know. See, I didn't know either. But
they just
I got to my first year of Kollel Elyon, and he said, "So do you have smicha?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm in Kollel Elyon. That means I finished smicha." He's like, "Yeah."
Well, they push them off. People.
But they push them off, and they. So,
it sounds.
I would not recommend that. So.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I want to get into, you could prompt me, I guess, is
what do you think is the greatest part of your experience here in YU, REITs, Kollel Elyon? What stands out for you?
It's really changed over time. Some of the consistent things have stayed, constant. The Rebbeim, for sure, is the biggest draw to the yeshiva, and I think, as we've touched on, in many ways what leaves the most lasting influence. I've thought about this. If I was going to share in some setting or another, with the Talmidim about my experience, I really would want them to know how just special, really each one of them is. I've had such a privilege, really just to see a decade of people really come and go through this yeshiva, and I've had different levels of relationships in terms of depth with different people, but they just need, people don't hear enough, and they should hear more, at least in my opinion, just how wonderful and exceptional they are in all of the classic ways, in terms of really being committed to learning and to really being in this institution and to growing in all the classic ways. But in some of the the ways we don't often talk about, they're just thoughtful and so deep and have so many, real burning questions that they're engaging with at this stage of their life that is all too rare in the world outside. And I think we need to tell the Talmidim more. Certainly we're here all the time. So in many ways, I feel like it's our job, just like how incredible they are. And people don't hear it enough. They don't hear it enough here. And maybe it's something we're all thinking, something we all feel about them. But in a lot of ways, what for me has become like one of the best parts of this place is really just these young men on like the precipice of their adult life, grappling with the most real, sincere, and honest questions. They're really living. Like they're really living. And I just wish they could get a tap on the shoulder every so often from someone older than them that they really trust and they admire, just to tell them like, you're doing really great. Like keep this up. Because they're really amazing. The things we deal with, I mean, think about the questions you'll get at Night Seder. If it's not about a Bakiyas, it's like, we know this now because we're older. It's very easy to just start, once you're done in these years being in like an institution, to just like stop having that same passion. And like, halavai, like this is what the questions we should be thinking about as a community. Like they need to know how great this is and how great they are and how capable they are. Because they really are. They're incredible.
If we just had this interview for that, Yoni, that was, I got the chills just hearing you say that, so thank you.
So what are we going to miss?
What are we going to miss? We're going to miss everything.
I want to like paint the scene for you. This is how I've been thinking about it. It's September 15th, 2026. And you wake up somewhere. For you, it might be Washington Heights, unless you made plans you haven't told me about yet. But let's say you wake up somewhere else and no yeshiva, you're not there, you're not in Washington Heights. You're somewhere else. What does that feel like? You're just not in the yeshiva anymore.
It's a heavy question. I feel like yeshiva's prepared me for the fact that wherever I end up, I will be doing with my time what I am doing here in yeshiva. I hope that I will be seriously learning Torah. I know. I mean, how are we going to say it? I'm going to be learning Torah seriously wherever I am in the future. And I'm always going to look back and try and access my Rebbeim. I think one of the things of why you Torah, which is amazing, is that I have access to the Torah of my Rebbeim, even though I don't have access to them if I end up in Denver, let's say. Not that I'm saying I'm going to be in Denver, but if I end up, far, far away, so I can still access that anchor, which is, my Rebbeim. I'm going to miss the people for sure. One thing which I always reflect on with my wife is that in Washington Heights, you have such a dense, per capita of people who are B'nai Aliyah, B'nai Torah, people who want to grow. You go to a community, the way communities work is at a convenience. I got a job there, so I go there. And it worked out for us for whatever reason, we go over there. Communities are rarely built on the values. They try and create values together once they're there. But Washington Heights, you have, like you were just saying, the Talmidim here just want to grow. And the people who live here are in Smicha and Kollel Elyon, are Rabbanim, and they just want to do Avodas Hashem, and they want to grow, and they want to be better people. And what frightens me is the thought that I'll be one of the few and the proud, not that few, but in wherever we go, that won't be the norm of whatever community I'm in. And so that's certainly something I'm going to miss, depending on where I land.
It's true. Like there's always this reset that like coming back into the walls of yeshiva gives you. Like sometimes you go on vacation or you're away for Pesach and you experience what it's really like to be outside yeshiva and how many winter breaks or whatever Bein Azmanim have you and I experienced. And you know that like wherever your mind drifts, okay, like in a few weeks I'll be back and maybe like a rough adjustment.
Right.
But like I'll be in like the May Hadas. Like I'll be in its waters and like it'll shake you back up. Like I often really do wonder, like I see in my Rebbeim this ability, like no matter where they are, to just be their best selves. And it doesn't matter their environment. Like most people don't work that way. And like coming back here, it's like a restart. So when we're gone and we're not in that environment, it's like, what's going to kick us back? And it's a really important question. How do you make sure that you're the same idealistic, impassioned person? You know, your avodas Hashem is as focused. Your avodas Hashem is as focused as it is when like you get shaken back into it here.
Yeah.
You know, like the yeshiva is like our shofar. Like it's the Uri Shena Naschan. It really is. So it's true. It's a special place. It brings you back.
You have any other big things you're gonna miss?
I'll miss the table. I'll miss the chairs.
This one right here. The chairs have changed every 2 years. I don't know.
Yeah. They make it easy. Yeah. Definitely a bunch of things. We don't have so much time. For me, it's a little bit personal, but I'm comfortable sharing with you.
I won't tell anyone.
For me, what I'll miss the most is that I have really become, in a major way, totally identified with, the banner of the yeshiva, with what we do here in the yeshiva, with the Talmidim. Now I started teaching in the 9th grade in YU's high school, and I've been teaching like Bikiyas for the 12th grade. I feel in a lot of ways that I've become very connected to this yeshiva, and that it hasn't just been a place for me to learn and to grow. Even a place to give back. Like it's more than a place like to give back. It's like my own personal mission, like the mission of Josh Kaufman, is not really all that different. It's very much like the same as what the yeshiva stands for. So like all the time that we're here, we're like part of that. Machine is like a bad word, but you're part of that program. And when we're off on our own doing whatever we're doing, even if it's like connected to our roots, you're not part of the game anymore. You're not part of the scene. You're not part of what happens on a day-to-day in the yeshiva. You're not part of building up that yeshiva. And for me, like being away from it and like having it happen, like not under my watch, I guess, or having it happen like without being there, being part of it, is going to be really hard. It's going to be hard to say goodbye. Like it's going to be hard to it be another one of those things that we've done in our lives where you gave it a few years. I went to DRS for 4 years. I've been out of it for so long. So it just happens. Like it's not the place, it's a place I'm always connected to and feel warm about. It's not my place. Like it's someone else's. I can look at it almost a little bit as like an outsider at this point. What happens in an institution over 10 years, it's hard to imagine that, like the place we spent the majority of our life, basically, of our adult thinking life. It's hard to imagine that it's going to become another one of those, places like things are happening every day, and we'll always stay connected, but like things are happening every day and like it's just not part of our daily life. Like that's going to be weird. It's going to be strange. It's going to feel weird. Yeah.
It shall be at least a half chatzi nechama for the fact that you'll be taking all those values you identify with and spreading them to places which have a lot less of it.
It's a little bit of a nechama. There's nothing like the center versus the its branches. But yeah, that is exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, people go on and we live it out. Or like Rebbe Berman says, go out to the world. Yeah, we do it. But there's definitely, I'm very sentimental. And then it later, this sentimentality turns into nostalgia. So like that's going to be hard. We really we stayed here, we lived here, we live in the Heights with our families. This has been home. More home than really anything else. So.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hashkafa.
Yeah. Awesome.
Josh. pleasure to catch up with you.